we're here to talk about my girl. Hi everyone, I am so excited. I finished the final season, the series finale of She-Ra and the Princess of Power, and I wanted to come here, talk to you about my thoughts about the season, the series, what I think it means in terms of queer representation in the long run, and to also just have a small fandom kickback about what I think about some of the fandom stuff, what other people are saying, get into that, you know, funky discourse that makes the internet so terrifying. So if you like this and you like these videos, just continue to like, subscribe, and also ring the notification bell, because what I have found out is that so many of you guys do not actually get notifications when my videos go up, whether I'm putting them on Premiere or anything else. So like, if you like this content, do that thing, because Catra would. I'm not gonna do plot synopsis or breakdowns because I actually feel like if you've already seen it, do you really need me to repeat all those details? I think overall the theme of She-Ra has always been about redemption and love and growth. But I think what She-Ra has been so masterful at doing is understanding that redemption is not just one action, it is what you do after the fact. And I think with all of the characters that we saw get redeemed, they also got to live and work out what that redemption was going to look like. And this will be a huge deal as we get into the stories about what happened with Catra, what happened with Shadow Weaver, and what happened with Hordak, and why Hordak was redeemed, and I'm putting redeemed in air quotes because I'm going to discuss it later, and why someone like a Horde Prime wasn't. Overall, I found this season to be really good, and I know that is going to sound super repetitive because I think that one of She-Ra's biggest issues tends to be its pacing, that you don't get to sit with a lot of things in the long run. It's very emotionally rich, but sometimes you feel as if it's getting to that place faster than the plot is allowing it to. And a lot of that has to do with the compact nature of the show. The show gets compared to Avatar and a lot of other shows a lot, but those shows have had much longer run times. Even if you think about Avatar with only having 3 books, those 3 books make up to about 61 episodes, where I think altogether She-Ra has just over 50, and that emotional richness I think can make people feel as if people aren't paying for the consequences of their actions, which is something that I disagree with personally, because again, as I said before in my previous Catra video, which is very good, I do not think that redemption necessarily needs to happen because of punishment. I think that we in Western society have been very programmed to believe that the only way to have someone really change is for them to face extreme difficulty in that change, and there must always be an external element or turmoil to get them from point A to point B. However, as someone who both in real life and now in fiction knows that to not necessarily be true nor helpful to the psychological development of a character, I really enjoy that a lot of the redemption for these characters is framed not through the obstacles that are put in place for them by other people, but how they themselves are able to deal with what it means to change, to grow, and to acknowledge the pain that they have caused other people. One of the things that I've always really loved about She-Ra is the fact that it is so character driven and rich. And so for me, as we watch Catra and Glimmer attempt to maneuver with Horde Prime, as we watch the team come together to save them, what's important to me are the relationship dynamics that are being nourished and fulfilled through this. Entrapted may not go through extreme plot related devices in order to be acknowledged or redeemed by her group, but she is very thoroughly chastised, and she is now, as we go further on, able to make decisions about her friends, not just for the furtherment of tech. She's able to stop herself, to pull away. There's a scene in the penultimate episode, I believe, the Heart Part 1, where she almost does something, but then she stops herself because she is now in a better place and able to prioritize those, because now she has healthy attachment. A lot of these characters struggle with their attachment issues, either from their parents or from their peers. And so a lot of what's going on in the series, and Noelle has said this, which makes me feel like we're on the same page, is these characters learning to live outside of the expectations of who they are. And what this season really does is put their entire journey into a larger emotional context. If you put all the seasons together, you see their hero's journey, you see their character development, you see their arc. You know, I've been watching The Sopranos, and Christopher says in the first season, he's like, what's my arc? You start off here and you end off here. And every character does end up going through, even if it's a small arc, a significant one that gets them to a place where they are able to have what they want and what they need in the same space. Character-wise, I would say Adora has really been, she's one of the best of the Usagi children, and I call Usagi's children characters that are sort of based in the same altruistic, redemptive nature of Usagi Toskino from the Sailor Moon series. There will be a whole episode about how Sailor Moon's the blueprint because she is and deserves much more respect than some of the people in the anime fandom want to give her, because y'all really be haters sometimes. But I really enjoyed how Adora in this season was really called to ask herself, what are the limits to her heroism? Why is she always stepping up to be a martyr, to be the one who takes on everything? And I thought it was a really interesting dynamic, because when Mara comes up to her and says, you know, you don't have to do it all. You can share your burdens. You don't have to have the weight on your world for your shoulder. What do you want? That is so important. And I think what's so great about this show and Steven Universe and Adventure Time is that they all understand that being a hero isn't just fun. There is a psychological, emotional, physiological sometimes cost to what it means to give yourself up for something. Adora is willing to die to save people, but she has lived a very deeply unfulfilling life before she escaped from the Horde, besides her relationship with Catra. And so in this season, we really see Adora have to struggle with the idea that who she is good enough as a hero, and that matters and is important. And my neighbors are playing music right now, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna record this video if they don't just turn that shit off. I want the natural lighting. We're gonna have to put pause on this for a little bit. The topic that's probably going to be the most heavily debated and contested by everybody is going to be the issue of redemption. Whether or not Catra did enough to be redeemed, whether Hordak did enough to be redeemed, and what does all of that mean? And I feel like there's no real way to discuss the season finale, the series finale, unless we talk about redemption and what that means. Now, I said in my previous video that for me, redemption means what you do after you say you're sorry. It's acknowledging the pain that you've caused and actively working to fix it. Now, the character that a lot of people bring up when we talk about redemption arcs is Prince Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. And while I understand a lot of the similarities that exist between him and Catra, and even to a degree him and Hordak, what I feel is often ignored is again, longer series, longer time span, but as I said before, is that Zuko had a healthier foundation for love that was more consistent than what Catra had. Also, if you actually break down the season that Zuko fully turns good in book 3, he is good for roughly the same amount of time that Catra herself is redeemed and then good. Part of the issue is the psychological journey, as I said before. When we see Zuko change, we have seen him go through a journey of standing up for himself, of creating his own identity, of standing away from his father's shadow, his sister's shadow, and really coming into his own. So that is one thing. Also, when we look at the nuts and bolts of it, it does not take him that long for the gang to accept him. He goes on a special adventure with each of them, except poor Toph. She got shafted. And at the end of it, he ends up getting all of their trust. He ends up having actually a really solid friendship with all of them rather seamlessly. Because at this point, we as the audience are meant to know Zuko is good now. We saw him go through this journey. We know why he makes the bad mistakes that he's made in the past. We know he was barely good at being a bad guy anyway. He is redeemed. With She-Ra, the biggest issue is that nothing about how good and evil is presented is especially cut and dry. Noelle Stevenson and the cast and crew of She-Ra really are having a story about how evil can take many forms, and how the most evil people are the ones who are unable to have any kind of empathy or concern or build real relationships with people. People who get so stuck in the idea of perfection and excellence that they can never succeed. Characters like Catra and Hordak, their relationships to evilness, and Shadow Weaver to a degree, are much more complicated. Noelle has said that she does not believe that Shadow Weaver redeemed herself. What she believes is that Shadow Weaver made a sacrifice for Adora and Catra's sake, because in that one moment she was putting them before herself. And what Noelle said, and I think is very apt, and if you are a patron, you can see me kind of bring up this point in my live watching of the finale, is that Catra and Adora needed Shadow Weaver to do that for them to psychologically move on past what happened to them. What Shadow Weaver did really detrimentally affected them as people, as friends, potentially as lovers before the finale happened. You can even get hints in how Shadow Weaver speaks to Adora when Catra and Adora are closer, that Shadow Weaver has always known that this attraction existed and purposefully put them at odds with each other in order to make sure it would not happen. So because we can see that now, Catra did need to know that Shadow Weaver cared about her on some level in order to move on. I think that was very important for her journey, and for her arc. It does not mean that Shadow Weaver is now good. It does not mean that Shadow Weaver is now redeemed. It means that she is an emotionally complex character, and that's fine. Abusive parents are both abusers and can on a level love their children. But the difference between a character like Thanos and a character like Shadow Weaver is that when it came down to the choice of my child or my power, Thanos chose his power, and Shadow Weaver chose her children. Whatever you want to call them. And you can see this from how she acted with Micah's sister, with Glimmer, everyone. She has this corrosive part of her that destroys the people that she could care about. And that makes her an interesting character. Not redeemed, not good, just more elevated. I think the problem with talking about redemption on a lot of these shows is that people really put redemption and did one good thing on the same wavelength. Shadow Weaver can't be redeemed because she's never done anything post this change, this authentic moment of change, to show that it's stuck. That's why when people talk about Anakin and Darth Vader, if he redeemed himself, it's like, was he redeemed, or did he do one good thing that helped save other people? That doesn't automatically make you inherently good. He didn't actively help destroy the systems that were in place, and you were tricked into it, yes, but you also made choices from a place of fear. Anakin is sympathetic, and his ending shows that he had the ability to go back to the good side, but he does not live long enough to fully be redeemed. And I don't want to cross over too much with my feelings on it, on like sort of like queer fandom, but what I will say about Catra is that my favorite part is when she has that moment where she's like, I'm angry, I'm trying to work on that right now, and I'm like, she knows she has to keep working. It is not, she did one good thing and then it's good. She didn't expect to be saved after she did that one good thing. She was content to have that be a sacrifice and to move on with it. But now that she is living, she has to know how to be a better friend, a better ally, and take her lumps. When she's getting called out, she's not yelling at anybody. She's taking it because she knows it is earned, it is deserved. She did that. But what I think people are confusing with this is that by the team allowing her to be there, it means that she's not paying a consequence. Again, I think it's more psychological than a real punishment basis, but I think that we're also flattening what certain moments did. Like in terms of Glimmer, people are like, well, she never had to deal with the consequences of what she did to Glimmer. Glimmer had an opportunity to kill Catra last season and chose not to. And in response to that act of kindness is why Catra in this season is drawn to helping Glimmer and saves Glimmer. But because like we're trying to look for punishment, we're not seeing that the worst thing your enemy can, that's the worst thing that someone can do sometimes is not punish you, is forgive you, is give you the opportunity to potentially fail again. And Catra did not rise to that opportunity, she did better. And because she did better, Glimmer could forgive her. Because what I think a lot of people want is for like Scorpia to hate her. Scorpia was never hating Catra. Scorpia was disappointed in Catra. She was let down by Catra. She was even emotionally abused by Catra. But she never thought that Catra was beyond redemption. When she helps Glimmer get to the Fright Zone, what did she tell Glimmer? Don't hurt Catra. She's a good person deep down. So the expectation that we have for Scorpia to punish Catra is misplaced. That was never going to be on the table. And if you're watching the show and you're watching what it has to say about redemption, you can see that. As for Hordak, Hordak ended up being one of the most fascinating characters to me. Like, y'all know I'm in Trap Deck Trash, but it's okay because all my ships are canon. All my ships are canon. It feels real good. Like, I gotta say, like, Scorpio Perfuma, it happened. Catra and Adora, it happened. Hordak and Entrapped, it happened. Everything I wanted came true. It's like being a princess. The thing with Hordak that's really interesting in retrospect is how the seeds of him wanting to break away from his conditioning are sort of peppered into how he acts and treats everybody around him. Even in the ending scene when Horde Prime is sort of like exorcised from Hordak's body, you see that moment where like Hordak is holding baby Adora, and that plants a seed that on some level he wanted this to happen. He wanted to be free of Horde Prime because he didn't really believe in his conditioning. If you look at how Horde Prime has such a homogeneous, colorless society, say what you will about Hordak, it's a completely flipped color palette. Hordak also does not have a team of people that look exactly the same. The homogeneity of Horde Prime was not reflected in how Hordak, even the fact that he kept, I think it's the creature's called the Imp, who has a great cameo later on in the season, like just keeping him around, knowing that he was flawed, is partly showing how Hordak was not the same person. Like, Hordak also wasn't, like, he was still a bad guy. I'm not saying he's not a bad guy, but what I am saying is that you see the layers of how he did not treat his cohorts in comparison to the way he is treated when Horde Prime is there. There's a level of cruelty in how he maneuvers people that was more absent. Like, the amount of wiggle room Hordak gave for failure among his team. I'm gonna ignore the bells because my thing is about to die and I want to make this point before I forget. And the fact that Hordak does live, despite my Mr. Shade about, are we really okay with this? Which was excellent, love that. It allows Hordak to have the opportunity now to help, to do better, to be better, which he could never do if he was dead. And that's why that's important. I don't think that it means that he's a good person. We automatically say like, oh, redeemed stamp. I think what is implied is that now that he is free, he is now gonna be able to be a different person. That he is a different person now. And I think that's fair and valid. Can you have issues with it? Of course. But redemption has to be what you do after you say you change. In Hordak, we never get to see that fully, but I think from what we've seen from like what Noelle has kind of shared with the crew, that is what's gonna happen. That he's probably going to go off with Entrapta, help rebuild Eternia, and potentially help free all these other colonies. Like, that's what Wrong Hordak indicates, that kind of decolonization is possible. That's exciting and that's good, and I think that's so much more important than if Hordak just dies. Let's get into the notes. All right, I actually enjoyed that the world building for the show expanded. I think it was really important to get an idea of what Horde Prime's empire has done, to actually see that reality reflected in other people, especially brown people. And again, these are not accidental choices. I think Noelle is very smart and she is very good at creating a really great body diversity in what she's showing, and I think it's intentional that we see a lot of brown bodies. I think Glimmer has had one of the best character arcs this entire series. She's really gone from someone who was very lost in her identity, someone who was very caught up in childish kind of childish ways of, I need to explain myself, I'm 16 years old, I'm not a child, you know. Now she's a queen and she's come into herself, and I think seeing her go from the transition from princess to queen on show is so important, because the thing about princesshood in fiction is that it kind of is a liminal space. To see Glimmer evolve from princess to queen in a way that allows her to come into her own is so exceptional. Also, and every single time her outfits be looking slayed, little thick glimmer is a queen, and we stand and we respect her. Bo is such a great non-toxic male character. He is so great at being the heart of the show, of being able to express such rich, captivating emotional friendship, and has such great emotional maturity, but they've also done a really good job of allowing him to be vulnerable, of allowing him to be layered, of allowing him to have needs, and allowing him to have, you know, the vulnerability that he needs to lean on people sometimes. That's important. It's important to show black people being taken care of and not just being the ones taking care of people. Notes. Take notes, everybody. I love the fact that they expand Mara and make her rebellion part of a larger organization, which I think also ties in really well because we see the first ones are sort of established to be an imperialist sort of society themselves, which makes it even more poignant that it takes someone like She-Ra with the power stolen that was meant to be for colonization and turning it into a weapon of hope. That is so good. Love seeing Natessa and Spinnerella get but they were always kind of like supporting characters, and having their relationship be front and center was so thrilling. I love that. I love seeing this fat woman be seen as so powerful, so cute, being loved. I love Natessa being sort of like the Batman, like I have a plan to destroy everybody. It helps that most of it is fire, although with Marmista, I'm not really sure how that works, girl, but you know, I would like to see it. Electricity sounds like the better option, but that's just me. I really love that development, and I think that Natessa and Spinny are a really good, not parallel, but they're a very good they're a very good parallel foil to Catra and Adora, because you have this very healthy, loving, long-term relationship between these two women as sort of the kind of like representation that we often crave first. You know, the first relationships that we want to see in media between marginalized people are loving relationships, because you don't get to see that kind of love all the time. But what I love about Catra and Adora is that it is more complicated, and I'm gonna say that's for the rant portion, but I love that Catra and Adora is a messy, imperfect, flawed relationship. And Noelle says this in one of her interviews. She's like, there are moments where you don't root for them because they are toxic, and that is interesting. And especially when you have a balance between Bo's dads, Natessa and Spinny, and you are in a world where you see that queerness is not an alternative, where it's not othered, so that these characters can be allowed to be flawed in the way that they represent other queer people. There are messy queer women. They need to have media that allows them to see that there is a way out. The reason why I sort of get really angry with the Catra thing isn't just because I love Catra. Like, clearly, obviously, I do. I love her. That's my boo. But the thing that I really dislike is this idea that, like, it is sort of this distrust of what is being said with Catra's redemption. It is not being said that Catra is being redeemed, therefore she was never an abuser. Catra being redeemed means that she has grown out of that space and will no longer be an abuser. Catra is not real. She's not a person who is going to just de-evolve, or that her change is fixed because she's fictional. She's not going to be like partners that we may have had, or people that we know, who will flummox, who will fail, who will go right back, who will never change. And I get that that's a very triggering thing, because the authenticity of Catra's love for Adora also being a toxic thing is rooted in reality. That is a dynamic that people deal with, and those are people who will never change in real life because they don't want to put in the work. They don't want to actually deal with their issues. When Adora tells Catra in season 3 that what is happening is Catra's fault, that to me is when they broke up. That is the moment where Adora was like, I love you, I care about you, but you have to get better, and it's not my responsibility to carry you. That is where the split happens. It is not until Catra says that she is sorry that you see a change in how Adora treats Catra, because that is what Adora needed. She always wanted Catra to be good, but she needed her to take acknowledgement of what she did and to say she was sorry, and that's what Catra did. And because of this being a narrative, we know that Catra will continue to grow. We see hints of that. That is real. It is not a trap. It's not a way to manipulate you further. Catra's not gonna abuse Adora. And that's hard because you can see that behavior in Catra and be like, I've experienced someone doing this to me, and that is real and that is painful, and I am sorry to those who have dealt with that, and I've dealt with that. So I get it. I've been in love with people who have been mentally ill and sick and did not know how to get help for themselves at the time. All I have ever wanted was for them to get better. Because I didn't stop loving them. I just needed to separate myself from them because I knew that my love was not helping them get better if I couldn't really hold them accountable. What Catra and Adora does is give the wish fulfillment that many of us have wanted, of having the partner that we let go of because they needed to grow, actually grow, and we meet at the right time where we can continue to have a relationship together in the future. That is what that relationship is. And it's hard and it's messy because a lot of us will never have that. A lot of us will never have closure with those who we had to leave for our own safety and mental health. They may be thriving with other people. Catra and Adora, in the representation within a representation, is that wish that you could be a part of someone's life that you had to let go of because at one point you guys were too toxic. At one point you guys were just not in the right space. But now, after healing, after growth, after acknowledgement of pain, change can happen. That's important. That is important for young women to see because young women, especially dealing with mental illnesses, are even more stigmatized because they are supposed to be good. You're supposed to be good all the time. You cannot be an angry young girl. That is one of the most disgusting, ugly things that society will tell you that you can be, especially if you're brown. A lot of people read Catra as brown, including myself. Oddly enough, she's the only of the main core cast whose voice actor is white. We need to break out of the mold that good representation always equals fluff, always equals perfect, healthy relationships, because sometimes you need to see an unhealthy relationship to know how to get out. And the thing that I always tell people is that the writers know it's a mess. They're not delusional. They're not like, oh no, OTP, blah, blah. They know. So trust them that they would not put Catra and Adora together if they had an idea that the character that they created was going to continue to be an abuser at some point. That's not the message of She-Ra. That is not the intention of She-Ra. She-Ra is about hope and change and love. And they would not make them endgame if at some point Catra was gonna flip. Alright, so let's get into the cons. I do wish the series overall had more episodes. I appreciate where they did spend the time that they had, but I do wish that we had a little bit more time in this world, especially since it's only just opened up this season. Even though I did enjoy the kind of like Kanto Bite-esque filler episode with those siblings, I wish I had come back in for the finale. I think it would have been a lot more meaningful if the final battle to defeat Horde Prime, because there is a big universe out there, because we've established that, it would have been nice to see that actually play a role in the finale. I wish the show could have brought back Angela. I don't like that she died. I love that they brought back Micah, because it's usually a trope where like a mixed race character, their non-white parent is dead and their white parent is alive. They flipped the switch on us. But I would have liked Angela to be alive. Even though I love Queen Glimmer, I do not like the dead mommy trope, and there are so many not good mothers in She-Ra that it would just have been nice to have her back. I do, and I will say, there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of good and bad conversation about the lack of other kinds of rep in She-Ra. And I will say, do I wish that the show had more opportunity to include like openly trans women? I think that would be absolutely, I would say that if there's any place I would have expected to see that, it would probably have been She-Ra. However, I also understand that A, it's not a competition. The show has been very good at showing a lot of different diversity. There's a lot of characters that could be read as trans that maybe are not sort of like on the page. And I think that She-Ra has done a lot of work to include non-binary people, front and back, in terms of crew and the people you see on stage. And so I think that all of that is really important. I think that this show is a landmark. It's a milestone, but it's not the end. And I think that while I wish that it had more room to have more like gay male relationships or more trans relationships and more non-binary relationships, but I do think that overall there are a lot of women who can see themselves in the show. I don't think that it should be excused to not include everybody, because I do think that we should always hold things to high standards, fair but high standards. She-Ra set a high standard for itself. We can raise it up to there. But I also think it's important for us as the people who are critiquing this media to not forget how hard it has been to get to this point. Because I will say this, we need to have better conversations about what we're talking about when we're talking about LGBTQ rep. There are a lot of creators out here that are trying to get to diversity points but aren't doing the work. And then there are actual queer people, lesbians, non-binary, bisexuals, trans people, etc., who are doing the work as creators, doing the best they can in environments that are limiting them actively. Like the fact that we had Korosami, Bubbling, The Garnet Wedding, and this in the span of like, what, 5 years? And we need to be cognizant of the fact that like it takes a long time for us to get here, that it was a battle to get here. We're not a monolith. And I don't think just because I love Catra and Adora that you should love Catra and Adora. There are plenty of legitimate reasons not to love that couple. You could find it boring, you could find it too toxic. All those things are fair. I may disagree, but those are fair critiques. But to make it seem as though it's unimportant, as if it's safe, it's easy, this is an oversimplification. It's not easy. It's not safe. It's not safe. It's not safe. Meanwhile, mediocre straight white people who you read as queer, that the writers have never said are queer, supercore, will get all of the same hoopla. It's weird to me. But I really, really implore people to really think about, what does good queer representation look like? And if you don't think She-Ra falls under that umbrella, why? I don't even mean that sarcastically. I just would like to know why you think that, if that's how you genuinely feel. Because I feel like there are very, very few shows that get so many things right consistently the way She-Ra does. I would love to hear your thoughts about the show. I've written about it in a couple of places, and again on my Patreon I have like this whole like me video. But like, just, okay, to take all the like articulation off for a second while I have these little slivers of light. I have loved She-Ra so much. It has meant so much to me. Like I've been like, you know, I've been gay for less than half of my life in terms of like knowing what that meant and being able to put words to it, and having a show like She-Ra exist just fills my heart with so much joy. Because when I was younger and I had my crush on Azula, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know why I liked her so much. I just thought, oh, she's a cool character, it's cool, it's funny that I have a crush on her. But now I can really say that I love Catra because I relate to this messy, confused, emotionally hurt woman, and then she gets to be queer. And it reminds me of how I fell in love with Bo from Lost Girl. Like, and to be able to know that young girls, young queer women and young queer folk are going to be able to watch a show and have that, and know that it's possible, that queer creators are going to be able to like make shows like this, to know that like, oh, we can do it because She-Ra did it, and Steven Universe did it, and Adventure Time did it, and Legend of Korra did it, and look, they loved and they're acclaimed. It's like Cricket Krieg is doing it now. It just, it makes me emotional, it makes me happy, and it makes me feel so fulfilled. I love it. I love Catra and Adora so much because I love mess. You know, my favorite headship is Bulma and Vegeta. This was getting me that life, you know? It's like, there are certain couples that are sort of like, their animated ancestors and queerness are like Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune. Catra and Adora is pure Anthe and Utena from Revolution Girl Utena. Pure Anthe Utena, because Anthe Utena was mess. I love it. I love that it's messy. I love Hordak and Trapta. Hordak and Trapta was giving me, this is how I know Noelle and me would get along, because that is the kind of shit that I love. The drama, the Beauty and the Beast angles, the like, and how they're both like ace. I read them both as ace, but they love each other, and it's like, because you can be ace and love, so it's just so good. It's like, Bo and Glimmer and their platonic friendship, love. It's just, I felt so nourished by this show. And Mara, I loved having Mara there. And by the way, I've seen some people call Mara a magical Negro. Y'all are using that wrong. Y'all are using that word wrong. My God, a magical Negro is not a black person who is magic. Mara has her own storyline and plot and things that are connected to Adora because they're both She-Ra. She's not like a random black person who's just like, I'm gonna help you out, you know? Like, that's what a magical Negro does. Magical Negro is a character that exists to help white people but never help themselves. Mara is dead. Mara did worked and she was a hero in her own. Her episode is called Hero Backstory, okay? She was a hero in her own right. She is just dead and she is part, like, she's like Roku. That is Shira's, not Shira, Adora's avatar. Roku is Mara. Alright, I'm done now. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, share, again, click that bell because that's how you can figure out if I did the things that I said I was gonna do. I'm also working on a video about colonization still. I wanted to wait till after Shira came out because I just wanted to see how it ended to really put it all together. So that's gonna be coming out hopefully by next week. We're hoping on that. And I've just enjoying putting out this other kind of media, talking about Inuyasha, talking about Hollywood, doing my thing. So yeah.